My tower in the Gila National Forest sat on a rocky ridge surrounded by miles of dense pine and scrubland. No fences, no gates, just a narrow dirt trail winding up the mountain and a staircase leading to a small wooden cabin balanced on steel legs. I was 3 weeks into a 6-week rotation in August 2007. By then, the silence had weight. Daytime was manageable. I logged weather conditions, scanned the horizon with binoculars, checked for smoke columns. At night, though, the forest felt different. Sounds traveled farther. Shadows felt closer. That night, August 14th, started like any other. The sky was clear, stars sharp and numerous. No storms forecast, no fires reported within 100 miles. Around 9:30 p.m., I finished my final weather log and turned on the tower's exterior light. A soft yellow glow meant to signal my position to aircraft. I was sitting at the desk writing in my logbook when the radio crackled. "Lookout 7, do you copy?" That was normal. Dispatch checked in nightly. "Copy," I said. "Go ahead." There was a pause, longer than usual. Then a voice came through that made my pen stop mid-sentence. "I can see your light." It wasn't the dispatcher. Different cadence. Lower. Too calm. I frowned and leaned closer to the radio. "Dispatch, confirm identity." Static answered me. Then the voice again. "Don't turn it off." My stomach tightened. I checked the frequency. Same channel, no crosstalk, no interference indicators. I tried calling dispatch directly. Nothing, just static. I stood up and stepped onto the catwalk, binoculars in hand. From up there, I could see miles of forest rolling into darkness. At first, everything looked normal. Then I noticed it. A faint orange glow. Far below the ridge. Deep in the trees. A campfire. My heart sank. Open flames were illegal in that area, especially during August fire season. I grabbed the radio and reported it, giving approximate coordinates. Still no response. I watched the glow through the binoculars. It wasn't flickering like a normal campfire. It was steady, intentional, almost controlled. Then the radio crackled again. "You shouldn't be alone up there." The voice was clearer now, like the person was closer to the transmitter. I scanned the forest again, my pulse pounding in my ears. "Identify yourself," I said, forcing my voice steady. Silence. Then, "You watch us every night." My mouth went dry. That wasn't something a random camper would say. I reached over and turned off the tower's exterior light. The forest glow vanished instantly. Not faded. Vanished. Like someone had snuffed it out on cue. I stepped back from the railing, suddenly aware of how exposed I was, silhouetted against the night sky. I locked the cabin door, even though I knew how flimsy it was. I sat on the floor with my back against the wall, radio clutched in my hands. Minutes passed. Then the radio crackled again. "You didn't answer." I didn't respond. "You're still there," the voice said. "I know you are." I shut the radio off. The silence afterward was worse. No wind, no insects, just the faint creak of the tower shifting. I stayed like that for hours, afraid to move, afraid to make noise, afraid that if I turned the radio back on, something would answer again. Just before dawn, exhaustion finally took over. I must have drifted off sitting against the wall. When I woke up, sunlight was creeping through the windows. The radio was on. I know I hadn't turned it back on. Dispatch finally answered my call that morning. I reported everything. The voice, the fire, the lack of response. They told me they'd send a ranger to check the area. By noon, 2 rangers arrived at the base of the tower. They found a fire pit directly beneath the ridge. Cold. Carefully built. No trash. No food remains. No footprints leading away. Only footprints leading toward the tower. Boot prints. Multiple. I asked about radio interference, atmospheric anomalies, anything. One of the rangers avoided my eyes. The other finally said, "This isn't the first report like this." He told me quietly that over the years, several lookouts in that region had reported voices on the radio that didn't match any dispatchers. Always at night, always referencing the tower light, always when the lookout was alone. They never logged those reports officially. Too hard to explain. I finished my rotation early, transferred out. But even now, years later, I still think about that voice. About how it knew I was watching. About how quickly the light went out in the forest when I turned mine off. Sometimes I wonder how long they'd been there, and whether the radio was answering me, or something else entirely. In 1999, I was 24 and working my second season as a seasonal fire lookout in the Deschutes National Forest. My tower sat on a ridge overlooking miles of dense pine forest, accessible only by a long dirt road and a narrow foot trail that wound up the final slope. The last 100 feet were nothing but open air and metal stairs, 112 steps bolted to a steel frame. From the ground, the tower looked exposed and fragile. From the top, it felt isolated beyond reason. Most nights were quiet, too quiet. The forest at night doesn't sleep, it watches. You hear animals moving in the underbrush, wind shifting through the trees, branches snapping in the distance. Over time, you learn to tell the difference between natural sounds and ones that don't belong. September 3rd started like any other late-season night. Fire danger was still high, but the air had cooled. The sky was clear, the moon bright enough to cast shadows through the trees. I'd finished my last radio check with dispatch around 10:15 p.m. and shut off the exterior light to reduce visibility from below. I was sitting at the small table inside the cabin, reading, when I heard it. Metal creaking. Not wind, footsteps. Slow, heavy, deliberate. Coming from below. I froze. The staircase was exposed. Anyone climbing it made noise. You could hear the vibration carry up the steel legs of the tower. Usually, that sound was unmistakable. Rangers, maintenance crews, sometimes other lookouts during daytime visits. But this was after midnight. No one was scheduled. I leaned toward the open trapdoor in the floor and listened. Step, pause, step. Each footfall echoed upward, steady and unhurried. I grabbed my radio and keyed the mic. Dispatch, this is Lookout 3. I've got someone climbing my tower. Do you copy? Static. I tried again. Nothing. The footsteps continued. I moved to the window and shone my flashlight downward. The beam caught part of the staircase, but not the ground. Whoever it was stayed below the edge of the light. Hello? I called out. This is restricted land. You need to leave. The steps stopped. For a moment, there was only silence. Then a man's voice floated up through the dark. I just want to talk. His tone was calm, friendly even. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. This is a federal site, I said, forcing authority into my voice. You need to go back down. He didn't respond. Instead, the footsteps resumed. Closer now. I radioed dispatch again, switching frequencies. Still nothing. Either the signal wasn't getting through or someone else was using the channel. I backed away from the trapdoor and dragged the small table over it, then the chair. It wouldn't stop anyone determined, but it was all I had. Please, I said, my voice cracking despite myself. You need to leave. He laughed. Not loudly, just a short, amused breath. You're safer if you open it, he said. That's when I knew this wasn't a lost hiker. This was someone who understood the tower, who understood me. The footsteps continued until they reached the final section of stairs, the part directly beneath the trapdoor. The vibrations were stronger now, the metal frame humming with each shift of his weight. Then they stopped. I sat with my back against the table, knees pulled to my chest, radio clutched in my hands. I could hear him breathing through the metal grate. Close. Too close. You don't have to be scared, he said softly. I know you're up there every night. My blood ran cold. I see your light, he continued. I hear you on the radio. You talk like no one's listening. I pressed my hand over my mouth to keep from making a sound. You should answer me, he said. I didn't. Minutes passed, maybe more. Time stretched thin, distorted by fear. Then, slowly, the pressure against the trapdoor eased. Footsteps, descending. Step by step. I waited until the sound faded completely before daring to move. I didn't sleep. I didn't turn on the light. I stayed curled against the wall until dawn bled into the sky. When the sun finally rose, I radioed dispatch again. This time, they answered immediately. Rangers arrived before noon. They searched the area around the tower and the trail below. One of them called me down to show me something. Muddy boot prints, large, worn. They climbed the stairs and stopped. One step below the trapdoor. No prints going down, just up, as if he'd stood there, listening. The Rangers exchanged looks they didn't want me to see. One of them finally admitted they'd had reports before. Trespassers, squatters, people living off-grid deeper in the forest. Most were harmless, some weren't. That night I was reassigned. They told me it was temporary. I never went back to that tower. Years later, I still think about the way he spoke. Like he'd been watching for a long time. Like the tower wasn't protection, but a stage. And sometimes when I hear metal creak in the wind, I remember the sound of footsteps climbing toward me in the dark. Steady, patient. Certain that someone was waiting at the top. Fire lookouts are supposed to know exactly who else is out there. That's one of the few comforts of the job. You're isolated, yes, but the isolation is organized, logged, scheduled. Every active tower is listed, every radio frequency assigned. If you see another lookout's light at night, you know who it belongs to. That's why what I saw on July 21st, 2015 still doesn't make sense. I was 32 at the time, on my third season as a fire lookout in the Kootenai National Forest. My tower sat on a granite ridge overlooking a massive stretch of wilderness. Thick pine forest, sharp valleys, no towns, no roads visible at night. According to dispatch, I was the only active lookout in that sector for the entire summer. No exceptions. That night was calm. Too calm. No wind. Clear sky. The stars were so sharp they felt close enough to touch. I'd finished my evening log around 10:45 p.m. and stepped out onto the catwalk for a final scan. That's when I saw the light. At first, I thought it was a star sitting low on the horizon, but it was too steady, too bright. And it was below the ridgeline, coming from another mountain across the valley. A fixed yellow-white glow, about the height of a lookout tower. My stomach tightened immediately. I grabbed my binoculars and focused in. There it was, a tower light, not a campfire, not a vehicle, elevated, stationary. Exactly the kind of light every lookout recognizes instinctively. I checked my map. That ridge had no active tower. It hadn't for decades. I radioed dispatch. Dispatch, this is Lookout 12. I'm seeing a fixed light on Ridge 7 across the valley. Can you confirm activity? There was a pause. Then, -12, no assigned personnel in that area. I felt a chill run through me. Could it be a maintenance crew? I asked. Another pause. No, that site is decommissioned. The light didn't move, didn't flicker, just stayed on, steady and patient. I kept watching it. 15 minutes passed, then 30. The longer I stared, the more uncomfortable I became. It felt like the light wasn't just on. It felt intentional. At 12:17 a.m., my radio crackled. You see me too, right? I froze. The voice was clear, calm, male, not dispatch. I didn't answer. The radio crackled again. You're not supposed to be alone up there. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I checked the channel. Same frequency, same signal strength. Identify yourself, I said finally, my voice tight. Silence. Then the light across the valley flickered once. Just once. And went dark. The night felt heavier immediately. Like something had stepped closer without moving. I stayed awake until sunrise, scanning the ridge every few minutes. The light never returned. At dawn, I radioed dispatch again and told them everything. They were quiet longer than usual this time. Finally, someone said, "We're sending a ranger up to you. Don't leave the tower." 2 rangers arrived by late morning. After hearing my report, one of them, older, more experienced, asked me a question that made my skin crawl. Did the voice sound familiar? I told him no. He nodded slowly and said nothing else. That afternoon, we hiked toward Ridge 7. There was no tower. Not anymore. But there had been. concrete footings, rusted bolts. A corroded radio antenna snapped halfway down and tangled in brush. The clearing was overgrown, but unmistakable. A former lookout site. The ranger crouched near the antenna base and brushed dirt away from a metal plaque. I read it upside down. Decommissioned, 1978. I asked why it was shut down. The younger ranger looked confused. The older one hesitated, then answered. A lookout disappeared. No body, no evidence. Just an empty tower and a radio left switched on. His last transmission, according to records, was never explained. That night, after the rangers left, I didn't turn my exterior light on. I sat in the dark, radio unplugged, watching the ridge across the valley. Around 2 a.m., something happened that I still don't talk about easily. A faint glow appeared. Not where the old tower had been. Closer, lower, in the trees. It flickered like someone struggling to keep a light hidden. I didn't radio it in. I didn't move. Eventually, the glow faded. I finished my season early, transferred out. But before I left, dispatch told me something they'd never said before. That every few years, someone reports seeing a light on Ridge 7. Always at night, always when conditions are clear, and always when there's only one lookout assigned nearby. They don't investigate anymore. There's nothing left to find. But sometimes, late at night, when I'm alone and the world goes quiet, I think about that voice on the radio. Not threatening, not angry, just relieved. Like someone who didn't want to be the only one watching anymore.